Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who heard about academia's publish or perish model and said, yeah, one for perish, please. Each month we spin the wheel and land on a new genre. Spies, mysteries, horror, romance, SF, it's all on the shelf. And right now we are reading every short story in Jeff and Ann VanderMeer's anthology, The Weird, including this one, M.R. James's Casting the Runes. I'm Zach, and this week I am really interested in haunted objects, spooky curses, and an antiquarian writing a story where the protagonist is himself an antiquarian.
I'm Bob. I'm interested in magic lanterns. Wow. I'll explain why later. This is a crazy story, Zach. So we have someone who is denied publication. That's the very beginning. And I guess you could call it, no, not I guess. It's obviously a revenge story. But there are weird elements because it is a book that is, what is it called? The Book of Witchcraft, I think. Or the Manuscript of Witchcraft. We have Mr. Carswell. But I think the introduction to this guy and about how evil he is just incredible. And I wish there was a little bit more of it in this story, to be honest, because I thought it was great. But anyway, I want to read part of it. Sure. This guy, this editor and the secretary keep saying, we didn't publish this guy for very good reason. One, his book is evil. He's got a bad reputation. And three, the writing was really, really terrible. But let me tell you a little bit about what evil we're talking about. And so this guy was invited, I don't know why, to entertain children. And he put on a magic lantern and everything was just terrifying. So he's flipping through the magic lantern, putting on these nice images for everyone. And then it says, but then it was this boy running through a park. And every child in the room could recognize the place from the pictures. And this poor boy was followed, and at last pursued and overtaken, and either torn to pieces or somehow made away with by a horrible hopping creature in white, which you first saw dodging about among the trees, and gradually it appeared more and more plainly. So as the children are just getting absolutely terrified, they say, look, stop, they're scared. And he says, oh, you think it's better that we should send them to bed without their entertainment? And then he switches it, and it becomes, it says, a great mass of snakes, centipedes, and disgusting creatures with wings. And somehow or other, he made it seem as if they were climbing out of the picture and getting in amongst the audience. So this is the kind of man that we're dealing with in this story, Mr. Carswell.
There's a certain larger than lifeness to this character, Mr. Carswell, that I kind of love. I feel like maybe they paint him out to be too bad of a guy. He's like Willy Wonka, if Willy Wonka
for evil, for pure evil,
was pure evil. Yes. You
don't get a chocolate river, you get a river of centipedes.
Yeah, so he writes this book about the history of witchcraft, and someone gives him a bad review, and he goes off and that person is found chased up a tree by something terrible, and then the tree broke and they cracked their neck when they hit the ground. I'll cut to the chase with this. This story is so fun because of these anecdotes. You know what I mean? Like the terrors of Mr. Carswell are so interesting and fun. And it kills me that when this story switches perspective to Mr. Dunning, the intended, next victim who turned down his alchemical manuscript, it's just not as fun. It's not that it's not as fun, but it's like, tell us more about that magical Mr. Carswell. I don't need to hear about this Dunning guy.
Give me more of the magic lamp. I am really interested in why these stories. So he's really interesting. I want to know a lot more about M.R. James. He's really interesting. His profession was he was an expert in Christian archaeology. So he read all of these things that are outside of the Bible, all of these medieval texts, these medieval manuscripts, apocryphal texts. And apparently, I watched this documentary about M.R. James, and one of the questions was like, he was so well balanced. He was such a calm professor. He was already getting paid a lot to be a dean at these different colleges. Why is he writing these ghost stories? It was like this obsession. All of these authors are saying, why on earth would M.R. James want to be writing these ghost stories? And it came to be kind of like a ghost hunter documentary of whether or not M.R. James believed in ghosts, and then tracking down the ghost that he actually saw. It was very interesting and strange. But do you feel like, is this a haunting story? Like, is the revenge scary? What is scary about it? I thought the magic lantern was scary, but do you think the revenge aspect of ghosts and supernatural is scary in this?
Well, this isn't like someone died and their ghost came back and is now haunting you. It's not that kind of story, which I guess I would associate with maybe like a Victorian ghost story. I'm not sure. But it's not that classic kind of tale of, a soul with unfinished business here on this earth. They need to get revenge before they can move on. This is a curse, really. He hands you a slip of paper with some runes written on it. And then 3 months later, you're apparently chased by a man with a dog who kind of tears you to shreds. If I read that correctly?
Yeah, when he gets onto the boat. Well, it's unclear, but they said, what was that thing with him? Was it a dog? Can't tell if it's a dog or a person. Yeah, a person on all fours.
And then at the end, he opens up a manuscript and there's the picture of the man with the dog. And in that sense, really, it places this story less in the tradition of a Victorian ghost story and more so with something like The Ring, where a kind of disturbing object is given to you and you have a period of time left to live until that object's dark will is doneth upon your body.
Do you think it's similar at all to the Saki story that we read, where there were things that might have been magical, not magical, but like objects or things that you could attach to, and they are the supernatural element? Does it feel kind of similar where we have a supernatural attachment to something? I mean, take, for example, like Evil Dead, the most recent Evil Dead, and the album. If you play the album, the Evil Dead are going to come and get you. Does it feel like it's in that tradition?
To be honest with you, no, I don't think it is. I mean, I think you're right to connect it to the newest Evil Dead. It's, a piece of technology that when you engage with it, bad things happen. But I wouldn't connect it to Saki's story. And I'll tell you why. Because with Saki's story, there is a sliver of doubt in Saki's story that we just read, where you as a reader have a perfectly rational explanation for everything that's going on. So even if the main character believes beyond belief that they're, summoning some kind of ancient deity of wrath in the form of a ferret, which is going to bite out their caretaker's neck, you as a reader have perfectly rational explanations for it. And then in the two previous stories we read, the protagonists themselves have perfectly rational explanations for every weird thing that's going on. They always stand behind a wall of doubt and disbelief of the true weird nature of what's going on. Here, quite the opposite. Our protagonist sees the weird thing, recognizes its logic. Oh, you hand a piece of paper with some runes to this person, and then reverse engineers the weird to stop it. We just got to hand this person a piece of paper back with their own curse, and then they will be cursed. It's fundamentally operating on a different register than everything we've seen so far in a way that feels, I don't want to say more playful, but it doesn't feel like we have horrors that are incomprehensible in scope in the way that we had with like The Willows by Algernon Blackwood, for example. In this one, the horrors can be comprehended, and furthermore, they could be mastered and reverse engineered to stop further horrors.
It makes me think a lot of maybe Reddit stories or urban legends. And it feels a lot like It Follows, that horror movie where you pass on the curse and the thing will just follow you, through sex, essentially. So then this thing will follow you and it will track you down no matter where you go, and it will appear to you like different things. It makes me think of urban legends, though, because all you have to solve it by participating. You have to believe to the extent that you actually do what is expected of you, even if you doubt it, I guess, you still have to do it. And if you do it, you can make the curse go on to someone else. Does it feel like an urban legend? Is that fair to say that maybe this is almost a precursor to urban legends that we seem to like a lot these days?
Yeah. I think that, and that's that falls in line with what I was saying and how it felt like The Ring. Like a good urban legend, I think I hear an urban legend and I say to myself, yeah, what would happen if I said Bloody Mary in front of this mirror?
Yeah.
In this one, it makes me be like, yeah, maybe I should get into alchemy. What's up with them runes,
It's a very motivational ghost story. Well, okay, then what do you think? Because in this documentary, I really recommend it. It's on YouTube, and the director is Clive Dunn, and he just goes around talking to different authors, talking about M.R. James. But they were really into this. Okay, does he really believe in ghosts? Is it true? Could this be all from his real experience? And they tracked down this old story called I think A Reminiscence or something like that. It's a story that no one really read. It wasn't published, and it's supposed to be almost nonfiction. And it says about a time that he looked through. He saw out his window, and he saw this wall, this hole in the wall, and then something in white appeared, and forever after, apparently he believed in ghosts. But he was also M.R. James was taken to a church by his grandma, and this church he wasn't familiar with, and I guess he was so disturbed by something that he saw that he had to be taken out. So he's just bawling, crying, something was so scary. And they say that maybe he had a vision there. But what do you think? There's this idea that he's writing these characters that step over from curiosity into obsession, and that has been a big part of the weird. Here, if we have an author who might be seeing things, who might have this these childhood fears that then turn into maybe a curiosity or maybe into an obsession, do you feel like there is any of that going on? Is there the obsession happening in this story?
Maybe in the sense that M.R. James himself, was someone who worked with antiquities or, was very, very interested in that and is now writing about kind of cursed ancient objects or like the, runes and, what mystical and magical meanings they can have and what kind of forbidden knowledge can he find from alchemical texts. Interestingly, the person who becomes obsessed in the story is not the person who I took to be a stand-in for the author, Mr. Dunning. Actually, the person who becomes obsessed appears to be Mr. Carswell, the villain of the story, which makes me wonder if we have a Jekyll and Hyde situation for the author. By day, he is the respectable Mr. Dunning who, checks manuscripts out from the British Library to cross-reference them with some research. But by night, he's Mr. Carswell, who's writing history of witchcraft books, or at least researching them, under the pretext that these things really happened, that these were real witches. There's a sense of temptation to the dark side of antiquities. And I wonder if that's a factor in, I don't know, this kind of like landscape of how M.R. James sees himself in this world.
I think what you're saying is really interesting about the antiquities too, and the dark side of antiquities, maybe going too far into researching these old manuscripts or this Apocrypha. They, again, in the documentary, it's always like, why would M.R. James ever write this? He wouldn't be someone interested in ghost stories. They're trying to prove that he had some experience, even going back to the haunted wall. But they said that in researching so much, because he's researching all of these really old texts, that he would find a lot of inspiration because they would be texts that are kind of biblical, kind of related to the Bible, but then they'd have all of these other tales or myths attached to them, and he would find things that he might bring into his stories. But they also said that he was trying to find miraculous proof of the supernatural in the same way that he was trying to find miraculous proof in the life of Christ. So it's interesting that he had both. He was obsessed both with his job, his academic job as an archaeological, what is he called? Christian archaeologist, and then his he wrote tons and tons and tons and tons of ghost stories. His obsession with writing these ghost stories, it's interesting that they're intertwined, but they seem opposite. One is very dark and spooky, and then one is, devotion to a religion. I thought that was interesting to have something they seem so opposed, and yet they are both like this engine driving him forward to make such an interesting author.
And at first I was like, yeah, I can't really see the Christian influence on this writing. But actually, now that I think about it, I believe this piece is the only piece we've read so far that sets up a kind of explicit moral universe. The other pieces that we have are all very wishy-washy. You cannot find a good versus evil tale in Algernon Blackwood's The Willows, for example. You just have, some modern men stumbling upon some ancient terrors. Alfred Cuban's The Other Side, it's not so much good versus evil. It's kind of like people in a city watching it disintegrate, but there doesn't seem to be anything above the mundane, super mundane. It's all just weird things happening. And then the final one I'll compare it to is Saki's Sredni Vishtar, which has this boy who's possibly summoning some kind of demon, worshiping this demon in the form of a ferret, a polecat ferret. And yet that's not necessarily put to good and ethical moral ends. It is a super mundane vision of the world. It is a cosmic, it is a God-filled, a deity-filled vision of the world. And yet these gods appear to not obey Christian morality in the slightest. They are out for blood. This is the only story we've read thus far, which is explicitly good versus evil.
In the introduction to this, in the Weird Anthology, Jeff and Ann VanderMeer write, James's influence is reflected in the work of both H.P. Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith, as well as Ramsey Campbell and Tanith Lee. And H.P. Lovecraft, that surprised me anyway. I feel like the way that James is characterized in this documentary, as you and I have just talked about the characters in this as well, it says that James would be writing characters who are rational at heart. They're not, they said, neurotic people. They are rational, and they try to deal with these things in a rational way. And it was interesting because H.P. Lovecraft seems to be the complete opposite. Like, the people who go and deal with something, whether or not they were rational to begin with, they turn into completely neurotic. They can't function anymore. If you read the Necronomicon, your goose is cooked. You cannot think properly anymore. I thought that was very different, and I cannot feel much inspiration or much akin between those two authors. Is there anything you could think of?
Well, maybe, how you mentioned the Necronomicon, the presence of ancient objects which have the ability to change you or the viewer or the world, or to unlock some kind of cosmic dark thing or be wielded by someone. That seems like something that Lovecraft might have picked up. But other than that, I agree with what you're saying about how the characters themselves don't really seem to be in line with the kind of Lovecraftian character who can't even look upon, the evil that the story describes. In this one, not only can he look upon it, but he can master it and use it against the evil itself. So,
very, very different. Yeah, you're not spoiled by evil. You find it's very different from Lord of the Rings. If you use the ring, you're going to go bad. This is different. If you use the magic, you can use it as a power for good. There's no corruptive influence. Or maybe there is. I'm not sure.
Well, he did seem to feel some guilt about using the curse upon the guy. Remember, he sent him off a letter of warning, which I thought was very strange because, that seems like a
the
good
ball
way.
In motion.
Yeah. Why even do that in the first place? But, this character sent a curse out into the world, and they had to return it from whence it came. And if that doesn't sound like a golden ring being forged in the fires of Mount Doom, which then must be sent back in, I don't know what is.
Everything comes back to Lord of the Rings, is what I found.
Yeah.
Everything comes back to Mount Doom.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was a fun one. I want to spend a little bit more time with M.R. James in the future. He seems to have so many stories. I feel like it'd be hard for us to cover this on our show, but maybe we can go camping sometime and sit around a campfire and just piss our pants in fright from reading each other story after story. I'll talk to you later, Bob.
Talk to you later, Zach.